We have Terry on the line. Terry rocks. He, him. Welcome to the show, Terry. I'm Bree, and this is my sidekick, Richard. or are you the sidekick, or am I the sidekick?
Anyway. No, I'm the sidekick. I'm definitely the sidekick.
So, Terry, you have a Bigfoot call for us, and we are so stoked to hear about it. So, hit us with it.
Well, it boils down to I have never had an experience with Bigfoot, but I firmly believe in my heart that there is a creature or even a bipedal humanoid out there that we don't understand, because there's overwhelming evidence showing that something is there, something exists. And, you have too many eyewitnesses and evidence, such as the footprints, hairs from an unknown hominid, and it's things like that. The unknown hairs from a primate, that's what sealed it for me. But it boils down to, you have so many people out there who have had these experiences, and it just brings to us that we're still discovering life forms on our planet that we never even knew existed. And even though this thing is, by human standards, huge in stature, it can still hide because of such dense areas that it's alleged to be in.
So, real quick about the unknown hair, I just want to verify. Are you talking about Melba Ketchum?
I think that's the name. Yes.
Okay. So, just to clarify, I don't know your position on it, but my understanding is that Melba Ketchum's research went to peer review and was rejected by peer review. So they actually created their own publication to publish the research. That's my understanding of what happened with Melba Ketchum with her research. So her peers didn't. They looked at the data and said this doesn't add up. I mean, so an unknown hominid.
Well, there have been also incidences, like physical contacts that have occurred. There was a logging company back in the 70s, I believe, in the Oregon State area, that they brought their tractors and everything into the camp. And the next thing you know, during the night, they're being pelted with rocks, boulders, logs. They came out, and there's thousands of footprints all around. Not to mention, rocks that were a couple 100 pounds just being hefted onto these huge machines. Normal human beings, unless you're Superman, you can't do that.
So this was.
I'm sorry, you cannot bend the teeth of a dozer with just your bare hands. And stuff like that was, the hydraulics were ripped out of these machines that are meant to take thousands and thousands of pounds of pressure. They were just ripped out like they were threads.
If there was a large hominid walking around, if it's impossible for a human to do it, is it not also impossible for a large hominid to do it? If it takes this much force, what makes you think it's some kind of large hominid rather than some kind of natural damage?
Well, okay, first off, natural damage just doesn't, throw rocks at things. Logs weighing 500-600 pounds just don't float into the air and land, damaging machines that are meant.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. There are earthquakes and landslides and all sorts of things that make these things happen.
You don't get landslide on a plateau. You don't get landslides on flat land. Unless you're working on the edge of something. But these things were in an area that is not known to have landslides, because it was a flat almost a plateau area that they were working in.
Is this the sightings from
And then you've
California,
got-
the lumber mill sightings, where they found all the machine, the barrels and stuff tossed around, and the footprints all
Yes.
over the place?
Yes.
Didn't make a
And you
mistake.
know, you're talking, you know, these machines were damaged by something. Maybe okay. You
Yes,
made the
yes,
comment
yes.
that,
Let me stop you, Terry.
you know-
Terry, let me just stop you a second. Yes, that is where we should stop. These machines were damaged by something. Well, there comes a time that we have to ask ourselves why we believe what we believe. And it seems that we can agree that things were damaged, but where we seem to be kind of dispersing here is that you're adding an extra layer on top of that. You're adding the cause of the damage without so much and the evidence is. I mean, you seem to be saying on one hand
they had 12-inch and 14-inch and 15-inch long footprints next to these machines, and there were thousands of them. They were not video, but photographically documented, as well as casting documents.
Where were these photographs and castings submitted to for testing, for forensic testing, or were they just published in a local newspaper?
From what I was able to read, they were just published, and it was a magazine that I'd read quite some time back.
This is Willow Creek, right? We're talking about Willow Creek.
I think it might be the Willow Creek, yeah.
Mm-hmm. China Flats,
And
Willow
I
Creek.
think
Yeah, so I'm familiar with this sighting, so I know a little bit about it. Equipment was damaged. The big footprints were around. The footprints, I've looked at them. There are more presentable footprints, more a believable footprint. Some of the ones that are kind of square-toed and a little off looking.
Right.
Just my opinion, of course, from looking at the
and I agree with that too. You know, because I myself have seen some of the photographs that were taken, and yeah, they do bring up questions. You know, just to let you know, I am a believer, but I am also a healthy skeptic.
Yeah,
okay, I just don't believe willy-nilly what anybody tells me. I do a lot of research before I even put any thought into something maybe being a possibility.
Right. So, and you're with me on the same page that at least some of these footprints are from wooden feet that someone's carved and strapped to the bottom of their shoes.
Yes.
Yeah. That you made large strides with. So we're on the same page about that. I guess where we kind of diverge is this particular incident, to me, is the first, like the novel idea of leaving fake footprints. To me, the trackways of this particular sighting, the Willow Creek sighting, are confirmation of the first Bigfoot hoax. Just my opinion, of course. I think that was a hoax. Those footprints were real. The damage definitely was real. I'm not disagreeing there. It's what did the damage.
That damage, that was an incredible amount of damage, you know. And from what some of the loggers themselves said, you know, I'm going by like the so-called testimony, or alleged testimony. Sorry, alleged testimony, the photographs, and you know, things like that. And yeah, of course, you got to piece together things that make more sense. You know, you got to put together the pieces that make sense to put together, and then you have whatever is left over that you cannot prove.
And Terry and Bree, because I'm not familiar with this incident, and you both seem to be. Were the loggers actually on site when the damage occurred, or was it a case where they'd kind of gone home for the night and?
So they arrived.
They were.
Go ahead.
It was a camp. It was a camp that they had set up, a logging camp. They had a bunkhouse, a couple of trailers and whatnot. One of the trailers was actually tipped over. They said they heard a lot of growling and grunting and howling. There was tons of rubble moved. I'm just going by what the document says from what I can remember. I'm sorry, it's been many years since I've had contact with that particular incident. But it's one of those things. Whatever, if you have more evidence pointing to a hoax, then obviously that's 10 to 1 hoax. But whatever's left over, you have to take and you have to view it in a different manner to try to find what the truth really is.
The thing is, this is what's getting me about this. And as you say, you're a skeptic, so you should understand this yourself. There has to be a justifiable reason for believing what you believe. And it seems here we've got kind of 2 possible scenarios, main scenarios. There are many more which could be, but we've got a hoax, or we've got the claim that a group or a single Bigfoot went around and caused all this damage. Given we have
a single Bigfoot.
Well,
they said it was a group of them.
When you look at what was for the Willow Creek sighting or Bluff Creek, whichever side of it you want to, a lot of people focus on the Willow Creek incident, but you have, the things that there was a drum of diesel fuel that was flung down a hill, and then there was a big spare tire, big machine tire that was drug out into the middle of the road. What equipment damage is that? The equipment damage you're talking about? Because that's what
allegedly there was the dozer teeth. One of the dozer teeth was actually bent up, like something had lifted heavily on that one tooth and put so much pressure against it that it literally bent it in towards the bucket by about a 6-inch lift. There was like the hydraulics being just torn off, not just cut or bent, wobbled back and forth to make it look like it broke or whatever, but literally just ripped apart. And so
how would you distinguish that? How would you distinguish the kind of nature of the damage, whether it
if you wiggle something back and forth, it leaves telltale marks. It also leaves thermal tracers that, like, if you heat up a piece of metal, it'll turn blue and then silver and whatever. When you wobble a piece of metal back and forth like that to develop what's called a wear crack, that can be discerned between being ripped, cracked, or being a factory defect. And this was, the metal itself looked like it had been stretched, not bent back and forth, but literally pulled from end to end, pulled. And the tubing itself was stretched where it connected onto the sorry, my dogs are making noise.
You're okay.
They stretched the metal and fatigued it in a fashion that would indicate to me that it was pulled with a great deal of force.
Where was this one at?
I think that was the Willow Creek incident.
I didn't read any of that. I mean, I'm not doubting you. Just what I've read about Willow Creek, it focuses on moving the big heavy tire around and then tossing fuel drums around.
Is it possible that this case is the things you've heard about this case have been exaggerated over time, and what you're reading is the exaggerated story? And I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. Not far from me, there's a road called the Stocksbridge Bypass, which is allegedly haunted, and several events were supposed to have happened around this road on one night, witnessed by 2 security guards. children dancing around an electricity pylon, banging on car windows, that kind of thing. And this has been well reported in the British media. It's entered into kind of British folklore now around this road that these events actually occurred. But I saw an interview with one of the security guards from a couple of years ago. This happened in the late 80s. I saw an interview with one of the security guards from a couple of years ago, and he said half of the things reported never actually happened. And yet it's been attested over time and time again, that these are the actual facts of the case. Is it possible that the kind of the things you're hearing are those exaggerated claims which have built up over time and like entered into folklore around the case?
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt about that. You know, when it's just like the game of telegraph. You know, one person says one thing, then the next person hears something different, so on and so forth. And the story is changed and added to and taken away from so much that, you know, yes, I do believe that might be the possibility of in such as the Willow Creek incident.
Yeah.
You know, and it happens all the time with stories, like, unless it's a first-hand account, you know, and like I said, I'm a healthy skeptic. I want to believe they're real, but at the same time, I do have a healthy amount of skepticism when I hear or even read certain stories. I would love to know that these creatures that have been reported for umpteen thousand years are real. I would love for that to be, but whether it is or not, I don't know. You know, because there's so few of them, they have the ability to hide better than, say, 3 billion humans.
Or hide from 3 billion humans.
Okay, so I'm getting on your back a little bit tonight, and I apologize that we do appreciate your call, but I need to push back on a couple of things you've said. You said there are so few of them, as though you already had knowledge of their existence, and
the population numbers.
Yeah, and you know the population numbers and things like that. So it was a matter of fact.
It's a want. I want to believe, and that is my thought processes of why we haven't found.
Okay.
So there's a lot of,
you know, that's.
There's a lot of pseudo ecology that goes into Bigfooting. A lot of claims made about the nature of what this alleged animal could be, how it lives, what its resources that are available to it in any given environment. There's been schematics built of how it's going to be perceived by the people researching it. So they don't comport with what we know about ecology. That was the problem. There's an organism in an environment, even if we don't ever see it and we never have firsthand experience with it, never hear it, never see it, there are traces in the environment of the existence of the animal that we'd be able to pick up on. We would know, because there's organisms in any given environment that we're going to keep track of their numbers and their population and how they're doing. There'll be even individuals tagged that are maybe we never see them at all, but we know the impact they have on their surroundings, on the waste in the environment, on the predator prey trophic levels, all of that. Trophic levels are really going to come into play when we're talking about a Sasquatch, because it's going to appear somewhere up towards the top because it's a larger organism. So we really expect to see its the impact running down through all the rest of the organisms in the ecology, from the plant life and fungus to the different animals that interact with it.
Right.
We would expect to see that those results in the sightings, and we just don't.
The only thing that I can honestly say when it comes to the Bigfoot theory and phenomenon, about 5 years ago now, I was homeless. My wife and my kids and I were living in a camper down in the middle of Missouri, just north of the Ozarks. And I mean, our camp was like, it was in the sticks. And we did have a bear come into our camp. We did have signs of a cougar and wild boar. But the one thing that we saw was just a single outline of a humanoid footprint. It was huge. It was about 14 inches long. Unfortunately, I didn't have the wherewithal and a thought to make a casting of it so I could have proof or even take a picture with my phone. But, that's the only thing that I've ever seen. That's the only kind of experience I personally have ever had. And this is like during the winter time. So I know it wasn't one of my kids walking around barefoot, because that's just not going to happen when it's snowing.
You said there's bear though?
There was I'd say it's about a 350 pound small brown bear that came into our camp. And because I don't carry guns and all that, all I had was a kitchen knife. And
so don't fight a brown bear with a kitchen knife.
Don't do that.
I get it though.
Yeah,
You're talking about defending your kids.
I realized about 10 feet away from our camper that, okay, that's a bear. His knives are bigger than mine.
Yeah,
So
he's got more of them.
Went back in while my dog's chasing it off.
Oh boy! And I'm just gonna say that bears are plantigrade too, so they leave kind of human-looking footprints for their hind feet at least. So just
right. Yeah, they do have a very humanoid looking footprint for that back foot, and it's also the way they step. The back foot lands into the print of the front foot, so it elongates it even further, up to 6 to 7 inches, depending on the size of the bear.
Right.
So, you do have that to take into account. So, sometimes in mud or even snow, it's hard to see where they would be separate. So what I saw could have been. Now, I'm not saying it was. I'm not saying it's not. But it could have been the prints of a bear, and it could. But other people in that area have said that they feel like they're being watched, and it's just a very off-putting area where we were at. It was just like, the only reason we were there is because the land was cheap. We bought 4.5 acres of land for $3,500, and we went down there to live and build a home, and it just didn't work out for us. We couldn't stay in that valley any longer than we did. We were down there for like 2 months, and we couldn't stay there any longer than we did, because it was just getting more and more intense.
It's kind of normal psychology to feel like you're being watched in an area. I go on lots of night hikes, because I live in an area that doesn't have bears and things that can jump out and eat you. So I'm very lucky that I can go on night hikes without having to worry about.
Officially, it has nothing that can jump out.
Yeah. And very often, I feel like I'm. Very often, I feel like I'm being watched when I'm walking over the hills.
Psychology of it, and that's what gets me. I should have been thinking more. Instead of letting my fear override me, I should have been thinking more on okay, there's nothing here that's going to get us. Whatever's here is not here to hurt us. We're just invading into whoever's space. And, we ended up leaving, coming back to Rockford, but I'm kind of sorry we did that too, but that's a different animal for a different discussion. But yeah, it's one of those things, to me, the topic of Bigfoot is an utterly enthralling and fascinating subject for me. And, I know there's a lot of other folks out there that feel the same way. We want to believe, we in our hearts believe, but at the same time, the corpse on the slab evidence isn't there.
Well, it sounds like you have some healthy
And-
skepticism there, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's what we want to see from people investigating this stuff.
teach my kids, like I try to teach my kids, you know, don't believe everything you hear and only
Mhm.
half of what you see.
That's a good
So,
notion to wrap this up.
that's-
Oh, we got to move on, but yeah, I wanted to give you the final word if you want to end on that, that was gorgeous.
Thank you very much for having me on tonight. I appreciate everything.
Yeah, thank you,
absolutely.
Terry. It's been a good call, and thank you for letting me push back on you a little bit.
Yeah, we enjoy these interactions.
Hey, I
Thank you.
appreciate your opinion, brother.
All right.
Y'all have a
good
blessed
night.
evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, that was a first Bigfoot call we've done together, I think.
It certainly is, yeah.
Yeah.
I always appreciate your perspective as well, because you know so much more about that area of study than I do. So it's always nice to have that little bit of expertise to bounce off.
All those classic reports. Yeah, I cut my teeth on those, investigating those. Kind of where I learned to look at some of these different lines of evidence. Darren Naish, I don't know if anybody out in the live chat knows him or reads him, but he is actually he's an ornithologist, but he does all kinds of great work on debunking some of this cryptozoological stuff. So if you're into that, if that's kind of your bread and butter like it is mine, he has a couple of different editions of books out there on the topic that I highly recommend.